Tonight, as the government faces a rebellion from its own MPs over cuts to benefits, we can reveal that unease over next week's vote has reached the Cabinet, with the Prime Minister set to receive some tough messages. Also tonight, a Newsnight special on the decades-long nuclear test veterans scandal. Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, says this Parliament represents the last chance to end a cover-up. In the studio tonight, veterans accuse the government of withholding medical records that could link their health issues and those of their children to the radiation they were exposed to during military service. Good evening. Welcome to Newsnight, brought to you from Broadcasting House in London. Later in the programme, we'll have more on the growing row around the government's reforms, cuts to the benefit system. Nick has some fresh insight. But first tonight, we're going to be looking at one of the longest-running injustices in British history, according to campaigners. The UK's post-war nuclear bomb tests that put tens of thousands of UK military personnel at risk, and their children, as well as Indigenous communities. And those veterans are still waiting for justice over 70 years after the first bomb was dropped off the coast of Australia. Tonight, we'll hear live from two of them and the son of one, who will tell you about what happened in the 50s and 60s and how it has devastated their lives, and how the Ministry of Defence for decades is accused of trying to cover this up. Also with us tonight, the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who's backing them and who tells Newsnight that this Parliament, between now and 2029, is the last chance to end this cover-up, while many of the veterans are still around. And if it doesn't, it will be complicit in it. Plus, we'll also talk to journalist Susie Boniface, who's been reporting on this scandal for over 20 years. Between 1952 and 1967, around 39,000 British and Commonwealth servicemen and scientists witnessed 45 atomic and hydrogen bombs and hundreds of radioactive experiments. The tests turned parts of the Australian outback and Pacific atolls into some of the most contaminated places in the world. Veterans say they were ordered by the MOD to sail or fly through atomic mushroom clouds without being protected or warned of the risks. Others say they witnessed the blasts using their bare hands to shield their eyes. Liver cancer, bone cancer, bowel cancer, skin cancer, brain cancer, leukemia, heart disease, stillbirths, and generational birth defects are some of the medical conditions suffered by many of the survivors and their children, including those with us tonight. These men, along with many others, are preparing to launch legal action against the MOD to gain access to their own medical records they say are being illegally withheld. Last month, a group of veterans lodged a criminal complaint about the MOD, claiming the department conducted a cover-up which amounts to potential misconduct in public office, a claim the MOD refutes. John Morris is 87. As a young man, he witnessed 3 atomic bomb tests and 1 hydrogen bomb on Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean in the 50s. John was a laundry operator washing contaminated clothing. He's developed pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune condition, and cancer. His firstborn son tragically died at 4 months old due to birth defects he believes is linked to radiation from the bomb tests. Steve Pearce is the son of veteran David Pearce. David died 10 years ago. As a young man, David took part in radioactive experiments known as the Minor Trials in Maralinga in southern Australia in 1963. Steve was born with a number of severe disabilities, including a form of short stature, curvature of the spine, a respiratory condition, and hydrocephalus, which is a build-up of fluid in the brain. Steve always said he wouldn't have children, so as not to pass on the genetic damage he believed he suffered as a result of his father's service. But after meeting and marrying Gina, he has a 4-year-old son, Sasha. You can see him there. Sasha was born with a rare condition which causes his teeth to crumble. Brian Unthank is now 87?
Yes.
87. As a 19-year-old cook for the RAF, he was stationed on Christmas Island in the late 1950s and witnessed 3 H-bombs. A few months after he returned to the UK, he lost all his teeth. His first wife suffered 13 miscarriages and his children have various health issues. Gentlemen, and Susie, thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Mm.
John, you were on Christmas Island, as I said, as a laundry washer.
Yep.
What do you remember about the explosions?
The explosion was something that is so difficult to explain. For the viewers, if you've seen the film Oppenheimer, I sat 20 miles from a nuclear explosion that was 1,000 times greater than that explosion. And people have reckoned it was like sitting in the centre of the sun with a pair of trousers on, a shirt and sunglasses. And the MOD have the audacity to turn round and say they looked after us to the best of their ability. I'm sorry, MOD, you have an awful lot to answer for.
And as I said in the introduction, John, you and your wife had a little boy,
Yep.
Stephen, in the years after, in 1962. And at 4 months old, your Stephen
Yep.
died in his cot.
Yeah.
Who do you believe is responsible for your little boy's death?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it was the MOD's experiment they did on the nuclear veterans. It took me 50 years under the Freedom of Information Act to get his autopsy report. That autopsy report said he had lesions on his lungs and his lungs had not developed sufficient to keep him alive. And that is down to the influence of the nuclear explosions. And as the programme unveils an awful lot of problems, genetic problems, with people and children, you will understand that statement.
And I want to ask what effect the death of Stephen had on you and your wife, Betty.
It was, at the time, it was absolutely devastating. We were both arrested.
What?
For murder, because it was a cot death. I don't blame the police, they have to follow procedure. We got to the hospital and we were arrested there. 3 days later, they turned around and said it was a cot death and we won't be pressing any further charges. His death certificate said he had bronchial pneumonia. As I've said to many people, if that little lad had bronchial pneumonia when we put him in bed, I give up. That had a devastating effect on my wife's health over the years. It had a devastating effect on how we brought our 3 other children up. My wife would not go to bed before I went to bed to make sure the children were breathing. Yeah. She would not get out of bed until I looked in the cot or in the bed to see that they were breathing. Now, anybody who experiences that sort of thing, you'll understand the traumatic effect it had on the relationship and how it has affected me over these many years. The MOD have the tenacity to say to me, when I'm 90, we want you to go to a court of law to prove that we, the MOD, were negligent. Viewers, we will all be 90.
Thank you for sharing that with our audience.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring in Steve and talk to you about your dad, David,
Yes.
who took part in the minor trials in Maralinga in southern Australia in 1963. And you, Steve, believe your disabilities are a direct result of the government's nuclear testing, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And I think the reasons why I think that you would agree with, because when Dad was there, he was there towards the end of Maralinga's use for the nuclear tests. So by that time, the land that he lived on had had 7 nuclear weapons detonated there and almost 600 minor trials done, which the name minor trials is laughable because they were some of the most toxic experiments ever done on planet Earth. They were literally, they were calling the safety trials, where they were seeing what would happen, for example, if an aircraft carrying a nuclear weapon crashed. So they were seeing what would it take to make that warhead pop. And they were just piling conventional explosives on things like beryllium, plutonium, all these nasty things, and then checking out what would happen and how far it would disperse. And of course, it went everywhere. It went in the sand, which blew on their hair, their faces, their Land Rovers, their beds, their food. They literally ingested it. So this land was incredibly toxic. And then along come I, a few years later. To my mind, it doesn't take a genius to put a link there to say there has to be something in it. And also my condition has never been actually diagnosed. So doctors can't diagnose me. So there's something genetically different there.
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
And that's why initially you were not going to have children.
Yes.
But then you fell in love.
Yes.
And you now have a gorgeous little boy, Sasha. How is he?
Well, he's perfect in my eyes. Yeah, I love him to bits. He's just brilliant. Makes me smile every day. Health-wise, he's good apart from his teeth. At 2 years old, he underwent general anaesthetic to have 8 teeth removed, which nobody should go through. We don't know what the prognosis is for his adult teeth when they come through.
But again, you say there's a link to what your dad was put through.
Yeah. Some dentists have said, oh no, it's nothing to do with that. But one dentist has said he's seen it before, and that was through kids that are grown up in the fallout clouds from Chernobyl.
Wow.
Because this dentist was Hungarian and knew that region well. So I've got that dentist saying it could be, he's seen it before and it's radiogenic. I spoke to 2 other dentists who said it could be radiation. But the official one, when we went to a consultant, said nothing to do with it. But we get that a lot when you go to doctors, nothing to do with radiation. Yeah. And I think it's because they don't know.
Brian, hello.
Hello.
Did you have any idea you would be helping with nuclear testing when you were posted out there to cook for the troops?
None at all. Nobody knew where the hell, Christmas Island was. I was sent off on leave for 2 weeks and then told, just report to a London airport. There's a plane waiting for you. And it was the inaugural flight over the North Pole.
Right.
In an American civil plane. We landed in Baffin, flew down to San Francisco, stayed 4 days, flew to Honolulu, stayed 4 days. Then I arrived on Christmas. They received me, said, right, come on, take you to your tent. There's your bed.
What were your orders in terms of what was to come?
What orders? I haven't been given any orders.
No. They just said go over there, did they? And
yeah. You're getting on that plane, you're going to Christmas Island. As I said before, apologies. Nobody knew where Christmas Island was. They took me to my tent. They said, there's your bed. It's up on a parapet with the oil cans around the legs to stop the creepy crawlies getting in bed with me. Get unpacked, report for duty. No, report for duty. Being one of the youngest, you got the jobs going. No problem, enjoyed it. A couple of months later, I went to, I was ordered due. Go and see that NCO up there and do what he told you. Went to the NCO up there. He said, right, you, go and sit under that coconut palm, draw your knees up, put your hands over your eyes and listen to the tannoy. That is the sum total of my instructions.
And that's when there was an explosion.
Yes.
What did you? So you what? You just put your hands over your eyes, did you?
Yeah, that's all the order was. Draw your knees up, put your hands over your eyes, and shut up and listen to the tannoy.
Right.
Tannoy says aircraft approaching, bomb gone. These tell you, I've told this story many times. There's a white flash. If you live to be 1,000,000 years old, you would never ever try to describe the depth of brilliance of this white light. You saw every bone, every bloodline, every scene you're going through your hands with your eyes shut. A living X-ray. The next order, get up and run into the clearing. As you look down the range, there's this boiling, humongous ball of flame going up in the sky. There's a big, thick, black line hurtling toward you. It hits you, it throws you into the ground, it burns you. Like John said, 20 miles away. That was my first bomb.
Unreal.
The next order was get back to work. My safety clothing, a short sleeve shirt, John says, a pair of shorts, a pair of socks and a pair of shoes.
So I'm going to ask you all then, because you are absolutely adamant what you experienced, what your father experienced, has led to various health issues. In fact, you're having surgery tomorrow, aren't you?
I am.
You have had multiple skin cancers.
Yes.
But when in May 2021, the National Radiological Protection Board said it had carried out 3 large studies of nuclear test veterans and found no valid evidence to link participation in these tests to ill health, how did you feel?
I didn't even know they did it.
Well, the NRPB...
Was I included?
The NRPB study is flawed.
Right.
Because before it was released, it had to be given to the MOD, and the MOD rewrote the conclusion because it didn't fit their narrative.
And Susie Boniface, you are nodding in agreement.
Yep.
Now that is astounding.
Yeah. A few years ago, we found the evidence about 140 pages of data which were never published at the time of the original report. Only 7 pages of summary was published saying, there's nothing much here to see, don't worry about it. The cause of death is roughly the same as everybody else's. And a few years ago, we found 140 pages of data that were never published from that, and letters from an MOD official to the authors of the report requesting that they add in the phrase that this is a chance finding over and over again. And in the final report, it's in there 17 times.
Wow.
And if you think that they've got the same number of cancers as the average people in the population, these 3 people here have a total of 100 cancers between them. 100 cancers.
And what you all want, you want your medical records, you want your dad's medical records, which you have been denied, and your mum has been denied. How are they able to deny you your medical records?
Well, I applied after Susie had looked at mine and said there was some missing. I applied.
Right.
And I had an email back saying everything is what's been sent to you and all above board.
But there are some pages missing.
Well,
Brian's missing 20 years of annual medicals. John's missing blood tests and chest x-rays. Steve's missing all the blood tests his father definitely had in Maralinga. And the reason they all get told the same thing, which is that you've got everything we've got. Because and it appears to be that the main departmental archives that hold medical records have at some point been sanitised by a government official of some sort who's come along, taken this stuff out.
Why? Why?
Why would anyone want
to deny you pensions, to not pay compensation? What is it?
Well, I went for a pension last year. I requested all my medical records. I received some of them.
Right.
I knew that would happen, so I asked the judge who was doing the case to ask for them himself. He never received them.
Right.
As a result of that, I was unable to prove my medical conditions, and I am sick and tired of listening to the MOD's garbage that they turn out year after year. For 40 years, I have listened to the MOD's excuse. It's such an excuse, they now even believe that excuse themselves.
Well, John, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to read a statement from the MOD and you can react in any way you want, all of you. The government says that the Minister for Veterans has commissioned officials to look seriously into unresolved questions regarding medical records as a priority, and this is now underway. The work will be comprehensive and it will enable us to better understand what information the department holds in relation to the medical testing of service personnel who took part in the UK nuclear weapons tests. What do you say to that?
I would say the word what the department holds. What is the department hiding that they hold that we are not privy to? In 2002, there was a law case taken in the High Court and the solicitors at the time requested certain documents.
Right.
They never, ever received those documents.
OK.
Now, if they'd have done that, they could have settled this case then. And now they're taking 80-year-old people to court.
I know that some of you met members of, well, they were then in opposition. So you met Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition. And how important is it that you meet him again as Prime Minister?
Crucial.
It would be wonderful. It would be amazing because we keep getting pushed aside. We keep getting, too busy.
We need them to make good on the promises they made us. We need them to keep their word. When I met Keir Starmer, he came up with lines like, your campaign is our campaign. We back you 100%. When I explained my worries for my son, who hadn't been diagnosed with anything then, after the meeting, he took me aside and he said, as a father, I really get it. So I'd like to meet him again and says, Sasha's now got a condition. Should you now be helping us? You said you'd meet us. Come on, meet us.
Susie, what's your assessment, having worked on this story for 2 decades, of how consecutive governments have treated these veterans and children of veterans over the years?
The veterans have always said to me the exact same thing every time I've interviewed any of them, which is that the MOD policy is to delay, deny until they die. And there is a reason that you've been given a statement from the MOD, the same statement they give me over and over again, and there isn't anyone from the MOD here to answer the questions. And it's because they are too cowardly, from the Defence Secretary down, who's met these men, they're too cowardly to sit here and look them in the eye and say, everything's above board, we're doing our best for you, because they know damn well it's not true.
And obviously we asked them to come on the programme tonight to talk to you, to meet you, and they gave us that statement.
Can I just add to that? The MOD are, as I said, taking us to court. Well, we're taking them to court.
Yes.
I hope the taxpayers understand that the MOD will use the taxpayers' money to fight the veterans that have kept this country safe for the last 70 years. We, the veterans, had to do a crowdfunding page to get the money together to start this action. So if anybody needs any money, it's us.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary. Go ahead.
And that review that they talked about,
yeah.
when we've asked them what the budget for that is, there's no budget.
Yeah,
When
I
we've
was
asked them
going
what
to
the
put that
scope
point
is,
as well.
they can't tell us. How many people are assigned to work on it? Not telling you. It's just, we want to work with them.
Yes.
We've offered time and time again, and we just get nothing. We're just kept at arm's length.
Okay.
The veterans have even offered, actually, the government a cheap way of dealing with all this. The total case would cost £5 billion, take 10 years to go through court. They've offered the chance for a 1 year, a special tribunal with capped costs. Let's just sit down, talk about it, find out what happened with the cover-up. We know people in government now aren't really associated with what happened in the 1950s, but there are people alive now who've got some questions to answer about what they haven't said and what they've lied and covered up about. But let's get that sorted out. Let's keep the costs down. Let's get these men the answers, and let's get Steve and his family and people like them, because there's 150,000 descendants like this. Let's get them the answers they deserve by making those blood tests available to researchers.
Okay.
And they haven't even put that offer on the Prime Minister's desk for him to decide. So he's facing a bill twice the size of the Post Office because his officials aren't telling him really what's going on with these guys.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brian, John, Steve. Susie. I'm going to talk to Andy Burnham now, who you already know is backing your campaign. I will see you shortly, but thank you for the moment. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Burnham.
No problem.
When you hear these gentlemen speaking, you know, there's a sort of quiet anger there, isn't there? Because they've been waiting and fighting for so long. When you hear them matter-of-factly list the health conditions that are affecting them, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's heartbreaking to listen to it, isn't it? You know, why, after all of these years, should they have to sit here tonight and have to plead for the basic truth about what happened to them? This country prides itself, so it does, about how it treats veterans. But how does any politician who'll be at Armed Forces Weekend coming up, you know, issuing statements about all of the support for veterans, how can they not think that those words just ring hollow if they do not follow that up by acting on everything we've just heard on the programme tonight? And I'm afraid that's the reality. You know, this cover-up continues. This is, like infected blood, a criminal cover-up on an industrial scale, and only Parliament can overturn it.
Right. And you believe that it's down to this Parliament. It has to happen in this Parliament, or else all those politicians in the House of Commons in this Parliament are complicit in the cover-up.
Well, John and Brian said it. I mean, you know, time is not on their side, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying that, but it isn't. Action has to be swift. And the question is, you know, we've overturned injustices recently, you know, Hillsborough, infected blood, post office. Why has this one got the firmest of lids on it? And I think it's because it goes to the heart of the British state. You know, they could blame a police force for Hillsborough, the NHS for blood. They could blame, you know, the post office for, you know, the post office scandal. Here, what has happened is that at the heart of Whitehall, British policy was basically a preordained policy, systematic, brutal policy to put tens of thousands of British servicemen in the line of radiation without their knowledge, without their consent, without personal protective equipment. And then they conducted secret tests on them and then denied it for decades. And the thing that Steve Pearce said, you know, that had then terrible, devastating consequences for their descendants, for children, for grandchildren. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that we're still here. And it reminds me of infected blood. It took me 16 years in Parliament to get to my final speech when I realised. But I plead with current members of Parliament, don't get caught up in the officialdom with all of this, and don't just send your letters and send your replies to your constituents. Look into it. Do something about it. The evidence is there if you search for it. Back the full Hillsborough law that should be coming before Parliament soon, because we need a duty of candour so that the good people in the MOD and elsewhere in the government can actually break out of this situation and say, you know what, there is an unacceptable cover-up going on. So I just, you know, say to all of my colleagues in government, do the right thing. Listen to what our colleagues have just said. This is Armed Forces Week. My goodness, you know, wouldn't you be embarrassed to say how much we respect veterans and what we will do for veterans if you don't do something about this situation?
And this is a message to your government.
It is, but I'd say it to any government, as I did on Hillsborough and I did on infected blood. You know, these things go beyond party politics. It's just not right that people have to kind of plead for the truth about what happened to them, to plead for a pension and then be denied it. I mean, this is injustice that's just off the scale. And, you know, as I say, it's different in many ways to Hillsborough, infected blood, Grenfell, post. As awful as all of those things were, this was the deliberate policy of the British state, preordained. The British state put veterans in harm's way, or servicemen at the time. You know, it decided to do that. It decided to conduct tests on them. You know, there's nothing unfortunate about this. This was the policy of the time. Yeah. And I think the reason they can't admit to it is because it's so shocking that happened. And I'm afraid the truth will have to come out.
Yeah. And there is an absolutely incredible documentary on BBC iPlayer, and I'm going to get you the name of it in just a moment after I've given you I'm urging you to watch it, which features Steve and Brian and Susie and John. I'll tell you the name right now, actually. Britain's nuclear bomb scandal, our story. Go to iPlayer and watch it as soon as you can. Right, quick look at some of the front pages tomorrow. The Daily Telegraph. British jets to carry nuclear warheads. The Financial Times. Trump lashes out at Israel and Iran in scramble to keep a lid on the ceasefire. The Guardian. Britain to buy US jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons. And the Times. The UK to match China and Russia with nuclear jets. OK, we're going to have a word about the government facing that significant rebellion from Labour MPs unhappy about proposed cuts to disability and sickness-related benefit payments. There is due to be a vote on this next Tuesday. Nick is here. How worried will Keir Starmer be tonight?
Well, Vic, in the last few minutes, the House of Commons has published its order paper for tomorrow. And this shows, quick calculation by me, that there are now 134 MPs have signed that reasoned amendment, which, if it went ahead next Tuesday, would basically kill this bill. That is up from 108 MPs this morning. I should say, quick calculation, it looks like there are 8 Northern Ireland MPs on that. So it's not all Labour MPs. Right. But what I have learnt today is that unease about this rebellion has reached right into the Cabinet. I'm not talking about Cabinet resignations, but what I am talking about is despair that it's got this far. And it sounds to me that Keir Starmer is heading towards conversations with some Cabinet colleagues with a flavour of wake up, Prime Minister, and smell the coffee. This is what one very senior figure told me. It is very bad. Very, very, very bad. They said to me the government will have to move. They'll have to make big concessions that colleagues can buy. Unless they do that, this bill is dead. Another Starmer loyalist told me the wisest scenario for the government would be for a pause in next Tuesday's vote. They said to me, you can charge into the heat of battle or you can pause. We need to take time. The view from Number 10, we press on. And there is support for that view from some MPs, particularly in the red wall seats.
Mr Burnham, you'd expect me to ask you about this, as you are a Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester sitting here. Does the government need to give ground on this, do you think? Well,
when the PLP delivers its collective wisdom in such numbers, it is invariably right, and it is right on this. And I would say to the government, listen to the PLP. Because I go back to my time in government and I went through some of those big votes that Nick will remember of the past, you know, Iraq, the main one, but there were others too. When there was such a kind of unease that was so widespread, and actually from really good people from all parts of the party, and the names are not, you know, they're from all wings of the party. If I look back, if the government that I was in had listened to the PLP, it would have been a better government because it would have made better decisions. And I think this is a case in point here. It's not about, you know, doing something just to get one at the government. Not at all. We all want the government to succeed. But the government needs, I think, to take a more unifying path. And on this issue, it should pause. It should get back round the table. You know, I met the Greater Manchester Disabled People's Panel today. There is genuine, deep anxiety about these proposals. But you know that the current welfare system is unsustainable. You must agree with that? Well, I would say the way it is run is unsustainable. And let me just explain. I support reform. Right. Because I think what you've got at the moment is a system that people fear interacting with. It's a top-down system. You know, how can it help people towards work? You support reform but not cuts? Well, I don't support cutting the help people get who have no other means of making up that support. And personal independence payment is something that helps people live their life, get out and about, and actually relieves pressure on other budgets outside of the benefit system, particularly the health system. So I personally don't think it is at all the right target, and I can't morally defend leaving people who can't make up that income being plunged into poverty. Okay. You can reform the system, but take a breath, pause, listen to the PLP. You know, they're giving you good advice here. Thank you very much, Andy Burnham. Thank you. Nick, thank you. And I want to say thank you again to Steve and to John and to Brian and to Susie. Thank you so much for being with us on Newsnight tonight. We really, really appreciate it, and we have lots of politicians watching, so we'll keep on at them. Thank you. That's it from us. Faisal's here tomorrow. Good night.